He pretended to be a driver, and his own wife got in the car. What she said made him cry. Marcus Bennett stared at the bank statement in his hands, feeling his world collapse around him. Another charge on his wife Sarah's card, another ride to the same mysterious address he didn't recognize, 3 consecutive weeks of the same situation. Every Thursday, the same amount deducted, always to a destination in the Upper East Side of New York City that Sarah had never mentioned. The 45-year-old businessman, owner of a small pharmacy chain, felt his stomach churn with each new discovery. "Honey, where did you go yesterday afternoon?" he had asked the day before, trying to keep his voice casual. "I went to the doctor, remember? I told you I had an appointment," Sarah replied without looking up from her tablet. But Marcus noticed how she avoided his gaze. That lie hurt more than a punch to the gut. He knew there was no appointment scheduled. After 15 years of marriage, he knew his wife's schedule better than his own. Sarah had always shared every commitment with him ever since they met in business school. The phone rang, pulling Marcus out of his tormented thoughts. It was Gary, his childhood friend and rideshare driver. "Hey Marcus, how's it going?" "Gary, I need to ask you for a really strange favor." Marcus took a deep breath. "Can you lend me your uniform and teach me how this rideshare driver thing works?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Dude, are you okay? Why the hell would you want to be a driver? It's not like you're short on money, right?" Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the shame burn his cheeks. "It's complicated, Gary. Just trust me, please." 2 hours later, Marcus was at Gary's modest house in Brooklyn Heights, wearing a navy blue polo shirt and a black beret. The reflection in the mirror showed an unrecognizable man. His always immaculate haircut was hidden under the beret, his prescription glasses replaced by sunglasses, and he had glued on a fake mustache he'd bought at a costume shop. "You look like a lunatic, Marcus." Gary shook his head. "But the disguise is good. Even I wouldn't recognize you on the street." Gary quickly explained how the app worked, how to accept rides and navigate the city. Marcus memorized every detail, his hands trembling slightly as he set everything up on his phone. "One last thing," Gary grabbed his friend's arm. "If your wife finds out, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do. Are you sure you want to do this?" Marcus nodded in silence. There was no turning back. He needed to find out what Sarah was hiding, even if it destroyed what was left of his marriage. The following Thursday, Marcus was parked 2 blocks from home, his heart beating like an out-of-control drum. He had left work early, faking a headache, and now he waited. The app was active, showing he was available for rides in the area. At exactly 3 in the afternoon, his phone emitted the distinctive sound of a ride request. The pickup address made his blood run cold. It was exactly his house. The passenger's name appeared on the screen: Sarah. With trembling hands, Marcus accepted the ride and slowly drove to his own residence. The automatic gate of the 2-story house opened, and Sarah hurried out. She wore a modest black dress that Marcus didn't remember seeing before, and carried a large leather bag. Sarah got into the back seat of the car without even looking at the driver, already on the phone with someone. "Hi, Dr. Allison. Yes, I'm on my way. Did you get the test results you asked for?" Her voice sounded tense, unlike the cheerful tone Marcus knew. His heart pounded in his chest as he drove through the familiar streets of Scarsdale. Sarah continued the phone conversation, and each word was like a dagger. "I understand. And how much time do we have exactly?" There was a long pause. 3 months? My God! Marcus almost lost control of the steering wheel. 3 months for what? What kind of situation was his wife facing? The darkest theories began to take shape in his mind. "No, he can't know yet. I need to sort out a few things first." Sarah sighed heavily. "I'll stop by the flower shop first, then I'll head straight over there." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The first stop was at an expensive flower shop in the West Village. Sarah got out quickly and returned within a few minutes, carrying a huge bouquet of white roses and lilies. Marcus watched through the rearview mirror as she caressed the flowers with extreme care, as if they were the most precious thing in the world. "To Mercy General Hospital, please," she said softly, and Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. During the ride, Sarah made several calls. One of them was to a lawyer. "Mr. Sterling, I need you to finalize all the paperwork we discussed." "Yes, exactly as we talked about. Marcus can't know anything until it's all settled." Paperwork? What kind of paperwork was she preparing behind his back? Marcus imagined divorce contracts, asset transfers, maybe even a will. The thought of Sarah planning to leave him made his hands tremble on the wheel. Mercy General Hospital appeared ahead, imposing and modern. Sarah got out of the car, paid the fare through the app, and walked quickly toward the main entrance, carrying the bouquet like it was a sacred mission. Marcus parked in front of a diner across the street and waited. 2 hours passed before Sarah came out of the hospital. She was visibly shaken, her eyes red behind her sunglasses, and she walked more slowly. She requested another ride, and again Marcus accepted immediately. When she got into the car this time, she was clearly crying. "I'm sorry," she murmured to the driver she thought was a stranger. "It's been a rough day." Marcus had to fight every instinct not to turn around and hug her. Instead, he offered her a tissue from the center console. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "You're very kind." Her phone rang, and Marcus recognized the voice of Heather, Sarah's younger sister. "Sarah, how was the visit?" Heather asked. She's weaker, Heather. The doctor said the treatment isn't working the way we hoped." Sarah sobbed quietly. "I don't know how much longer she has." Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Who was in the hospital? Who was receiving treatment? Why hadn't Sarah told him anything about this? "And Marcus? You still haven't told him?" Heather asked. "I can't, Heather. You know how he was when we lost the baby 2 years ago. He couldn't handle going through that again. I'd rather carry this burden alone." Sarah took a shaky breath. Besides, she insisted that he not know. She said she didn't want to be a burden. Marcus stopped at a red light and squeezed his eyes shut. What baby? They had never tried to have children. Sarah always said she wanted to wait a few more years. What secrets was his wife carrying? "Sarah, this isn't fair to either of you," Heather insisted. "Marcus has a right to know." "No, Heather. I promised her I'd keep it a secret. It's the least I can do after everything that happened." Sarah's voice was heavy with a guilt Marcus couldn't comprehend. The light turned green, and Marcus drove mechanically through the streets of New York, lost in confused thoughts. His mind kept creating increasingly dramatic scenarios. Was Sarah sick? Was someone close to her going through serious treatment? Why did she feel like she needed to protect him from something? The next stop was a stationery store in Brooklyn Heights. Sarah went in and came out quickly with a thick manila envelope. In the car, she made another call to the lawyer. "Mr. Sterling, I have all the documents." "Yes, I got the signatures that were missing." "Can you prepare the filing?" She paused. "How long will it take for everything to be ready? A lawsuit?" Marcus swallowed hard. What kind of lawsuit was Sarah filing without his knowledge? Perfect. "And remember, absolute confidentiality. My husband can't find out until everything is finalized." Sarah put the envelope in her purse carefully. In the following days, Marcus kept accepting Sarah's rides every Thursday. Each trip brought new, disturbing revelations and more unanswered questions. On the second week, he drove her to a modest house in Astoria. Sarah got out carrying a bag full of groceries and an envelope. An elderly woman around 70 years old greeted her at the door, and the two hugged for a long time. Marcus managed to overhear fragments of the conversation. "Thank you, dear. Without you, I don't know what would become of us," the elderly woman cried. "No need to thank me. It's the least I can do," Sarah replied, handing her the envelope. "That should cover next month's expenses." Marcus watched from the car window as Sarah handed over the groceries and talked for over an hour with the woman. When she got back in the car, Sarah was clearly emotional. On the way back, she answered a call that made Marcus's heart race even faster. "Hello, Dr. Henderson. How are the test results?" Sarah asked, her voice tense. "I see. And the surgery? When can it be scheduled?" There was a long pause. "Next week? That soon? Surgery?" Marcus almost crashed the car when he heard that word. Who needed surgery? Sarah seemed to be organizing several people's lives without him knowing anything about it. "Doctor, please keep this completely confidential. My husband works in the pharmaceutical industry and has contacts at several hospitals. If he finds out, he could ruin everything," Sarah asked urgently. After dropping Sarah off at home, Marcus drove aimlessly through the streets of New York City, trying to piece together the puzzle. His wife was spending money on mysterious rides, visiting hospitals, taking care of an unknown elderly woman, organizing secret legal documents, and coordinating a surgery. All of this while lying to him about where she was. The possibilities running through his head grew darker by the minute. Could Sarah be having an affair with someone who was sick? Could she be getting blackmailed? Or worse, could she herself be sick and trying to handle everything before telling him? The following Thursday arrived heavy with rain. Marcus was parked in the usual spot when he received Sarah's ride request. This time, she got in the car visibly agitated, speaking rapidly on the phone. "Yes, I understand it's risky, but she insists she wants to do it before the surgery. Sarah spoke to someone who seemed to be a doctor. What do you mean it might be her last chance?" "Don't say that, doctor." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. Who was facing such a delicate situation? Why was Sarah carrying this burden alone? "All right, I'll be there at 3 o'clock. "And doctor?" Sarah took a deep breath. "If anything goes wrong during the procedure, please don't contact my husband. He doesn't know anything about this, and I want to keep it that way." This time the destination was different. She asked to go to a notary's office downtown. She got out carrying a folder full of documents and stayed inside for over 2 hours. When she came out, she looked relieved but also emotionally drained. In the car, she made a call to her sister. "Heather, I did it. I finally got everything sorted out. Now, no matter what happens, she'll have the rights she should always have had." Sarah sighed. It was hard getting all the documents, but it was worth it. "And Marcus?" Heather asked once more. "He'll find out everything after he goes through surgery. If she survives, I'll tell him the whole truth. If not, well, at least I'll have kept my promise." Sarah's voice broke. Marcus had to pull the car over onto the shoulder. His hands were trembling uncontrollably, and he felt like he was about to have a panic attack. Sarah was preparing for the possibility that someone might not survive a surgery, and there was some promise involved, some rights that needed to be sorted out. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He watched Sarah sleeping beside him, noticing details he had missed over the past few weeks. She looked thinner. There were deep dark circles under her eyes, and even in sleep, her expression seemed weighed down with worry. The next day, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Instead of waiting for Thursday, he activated his driver app and drove around the city, waiting for Sarah to request a ride at any moment. The opportunity came on Tuesday afternoon. Sarah needed to go to a bank in the Upper East Side. Marcus accepted the ride immediately and picked her up from home. During the trip, Sarah received a call that would make Marcus rethink everything he thought he knew about her life. "Hello, Mr. Sterling. How is the recognition process going?" Sarah asked. "I see. And the DNA tests confirmed it?" There was a long pause. "Yes, I know that after 45 years it's hard to believe, but the documents don't lie. 45 years. Marcus did the math quickly. He was exactly 45 years old. What recognition process was related to his age? "The hardest part is going to be explaining to him why we hid this for so long," Sarah continued. "Do you think he'll be able to forgive when he finds out I located his biological mother?" Marcus's world crumbled in that moment. His biological mother. But he had been raised by adoptive parents who had always been transparent about the adoption. He had always known that his biological mother had disappeared shortly after his birth and was never seen again. "Yes, I know she's very weak. That's why I need to get all the paperwork done before it's too late." Sarah wiped away a tear. "She deserves to be recognized as the grandmother of our future children, even if she lost the chance to raise her own son." Marcus had to stop the car again. His vision was blurred by tears, and he could barely breathe. Sarah had found his biological mother. The woman he had spent his entire life wondering about, creating theories about why she had abandoned him. Sarah continued the call, and every word was like an explosive revelation. "Doctor, Mrs. Martha spent her whole life looking for her son. When she found out he had been adopted by a good family, she decided not to interfere. But now, with her failing health, she at least wants to leave an inheritance for him," Sarah explained. "That's why I need to get the will in order." Mrs. Martha. His biological mother's name was Martha. Marcus repeated the name to himself several times, trying to process the information. She worked as a housekeeper her whole life and managed to buy a small little house in Astoria. She wants to leave everything to Marcus, but without him knowing who she is. She doesn't want to cause him pain. Sarah sighed. It's a very complicated situation. The house in Astoria, the elderly woman Marina visited every Thursday. The sudden recognition hit Marcus like a bolt of lightning. His wife was taking care of his biological mother, and he had witnessed the meeting without knowing it. At the bank, Sarah made several financial transactions. Marcus managed to overhear when she spoke with the manager about transferring a significant amount to cover medical costs for a third person. It was the money she was pulling from her own savings to pay for the treatment of her unknown mother-in-law. On her way out of the bank, Sarah answered a call from her sister that brought even more revelations. "Heather, I got the money for the surgery. I'm going to sell the jewelry Grandma left me," Sarah said. "I know you think I'm overdoing it, but I need to do this." "Sarah, you can't sacrifice yourself like this. Marcus should know and help decide," Heather argued. "No, Heather, you don't understand. He's told me several times how guilty he feels for never searching for his biological mother. He always said that if he ever had the chance to meet her, he would do anything to make up for the lost years." Sarah cried softly. "If I tell him now that she's here, dying, and that I've known for months, he'll never forgive me." Marcus felt as if he were watching his life from the outside, like a spectator in a drama he couldn't fully comprehend. Sarah was sacrificing herself financially and emotionally to care for someone she didn't even know, simply out of love for him. Besides, she insisted that he not find out. Mrs. Martha is afraid that Marcus will feel obligated to take care of her out of pity. She wants to die knowing her son had a good life, without being a burden, Sarah explained. The word die echoed in Marcus's mind like a funeral bell. His biological mother was undergoing serious treatment, possibly terminal, and he had no idea. Meanwhile, Sarah was carrying all that emotional weight alone, lying to him every day to protect him. In the following days, Marcus lived in a kind of emotional limbo. He kept up his normal routine at work and at home, but his mind was constantly focused on the revelations he had uncovered. He watched Sarah with completely different eyes, noticing signs of exhaustion and worry he had previously ignored. The following Thursday, Marcus was determined to keep following Sarah, but this time with a completely new perspective. He was no longer looking for evidence of betrayal or abandonment. Now he wanted to understand the extent of the sacrifice his wife was making. Sarah got into the car carrying a large bag and a bouquet of different flowers, yellow daisies, which Marcus remembered were his adoptive mother's favorites. Had Sarah found that out somehow? The destination was Mercy General Hospital as always, but this time Marcus gathered the courage to enter the hospital a few minutes after Sarah. He pretended to be visiting someone else and walked through the corridors until he located where she was. Through a slightly open door, Marcus saw the scene that would change his perception forever. Sarah was sitting beside a bed where a frail, elderly woman rested. The woman had grey hair and eyes that, even aged and weary, resembled his own. "Sarah, you didn't have to bring flowers again," the woman said in a weak voice. "Of course I did, Mrs. Martha. Marcus always says yellow daisies bring joy to any room," Sarah replied, arranging the flowers in a vase. "Tell me more about my son," Mrs. Martha asked, as if it were a ritual between them. Sarah began recounting details of Marcus's life that he didn't even know she had memorized. She talked about how he always helped elderly neighbors with their groceries, how he got emotional watching movies about families, how he dreamed of having a house full of children one day. "He's going to be a wonderful father when the time comes," Sarah said, and Marcus noticed a sadness in her voice that he couldn't quite identify. And you, my dear? When are you going to give me grandchildren? Mrs. Martha asked with a weak smile. Sarah took a while to respond, and when she did, her voice was heavy with pain. We're trying, Mrs. Martha, but we've had some difficulties. She lied partially, protecting Marcus even from his own mother. Marcus stepped away from the door, feeling as though he were intruding on a sacred moment. His wife was building a relationship with his biological mother, sharing stories about him, caring for her, as if she were her own family. On the way back home, Sarah made a phone call that completely shattered Marcus's emotional defenses. "Dr. Henderson, how are the new test results?" she asked anxiously. "I see. And is there any chance of reversing it?" Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. "How much time exactly?" Marcus parked the car and kept listening, already knowing he wasn't prepared for what would come next. 2 weeks? Oh, God! Sarah began to cry silently. "And does she know?" "Yes, I agree it's better she doesn't know. Let her live these last days in peace." Sarah quickly wiped her tears. "Doctor, can you promise me that when the time comes she won't suffer?" Marcus felt his world completely crumble. His biological mother had only 2 weeks to live, and he didn't even know she existed. Sarah was experiencing this tragedy alone, protecting him from a pain he didn't even know he was supposed to feel. "And what about Marcus?" Sarah asked. "Do you think I should tell him?" "I know it's difficult, Doctor, but she insisted that he not know. She said she doesn't want the last image he has of her to be a sick woman in a hospital bed," Sarah explained. "She'd rather he remember the mother who chose to give him up, so he could have a better life." At that moment, Marcus understood the magnitude of the sacrifice Sarah was making. She was allowing him to live in blissful ignorance, while she carried alone the weight of a goodbye he didn't even know he needed to make. In the following days, Marcus fought the urge to confront Sarah about everything he had discovered. Part of him wanted to run to the hospital and meet his biological mother before it was too late. Another part understood the impossible dilemma Sarah was in. He began to observe his wife with renewed admiration. He noticed how she woke up earlier to organize medications he had never seen before. He saw how she cancelled social engagements to have free time on Thursdays. He noticed how she held back her tears during meals, keeping up normal conversations about work and future plans while carrying a devastating secret. Marcus also began to question his own reactions. Was Sarah right to protect him? Would he really not be able to handle the situation? Would meeting his biological mother only to lose her immediately be more painful than never knowing she had been there? On Monday of the following week, Marcus made a decision that would test the limits of his emotional capacity. He would go to the hospital on his own, without pretending to be a driver, without following Sarah. He needed to see his biological mother with his own eyes, even if she never knew who he was. Marcus arrived at Mercy General Hospital in the middle of the afternoon, when he knew Sarah wouldn't be there. He asked at the front desk about Martha, pretending to be a family acquaintance. The receptionist, after some checks, gave him the room number. Walking through the hallways, Marcus felt his legs trembling. In just a few minutes he would be face to face with the woman who brought him into the world, who had thought about him every day for 45 years, who was dying without knowing he was there. The door to the room was slightly ajar. Marcus took a deep breath and walked in. Martha was awake, looking out the window. When she turned to see who had entered, her eyes widened in a way Marcus would never forget. "Oh, my God," she whispered, bringing her frail hand to her chest. Marcus slowly approached the bed, unable to speak. The resemblance was undeniable. The same eyes, the same shape of the face, even the way she tilted her head was identical to his own mannerisms. You're Marcus?" Martha asked with a trembling voice. Marcus nodded, still unable to make a sound. "But how? Sarah said you didn't know." Martha began to cry. "I found out by accident." Marcus finally found his voice. "Sarah doesn't know I'm here." Martha tried to sit up in bed, and Marcus instinctively helped her. The first touch between mother and son after 45 years was electric, charged with decades of longing and regret. "My son. My little boy." Martha caressed Marcus's face. "You grew up so handsome, so strong. Why?" Marcus asked, his voice breaking. "Why did you leave me?" Martha closed her eyes, as if reliving an old pain. "I was only 16 years old, Marcus. I was alone, with no family, no money. Your father disappeared when he found out about the pregnancy," she explained. "I wanted so badly to raise you, but I couldn't provide for you. The social worker convinced me that you would have a better life with a family that could give you everything I couldn't." Marcus held his mother's frail hand, feeling decades of anger and abandonment dissolving into understanding. "But I never stopped thinking about you," Martha continued. "Every day I wondered how you were, if you were happy, if you had become a good man." "I had a good life," Marcus said. "My adoptive parents loved me very much." "I know," Martha smiled through her tears. "Sarah told me everything about you. What a lucky man you are to have found a woman like her." The mention of Sarah brought Marcus back to the complex reality of the situation. "She was trying to protect me," Marcus said. "She didn't want me to know because I'm dying," Martha finished without beating around the bush, "and because I asked her not to tell you." "Why? Why don't you want me to know?" Martha held Marcus's hands tightly. "Because I wanted you to remember me as the mother who made the difficult choice to give you a better life, not as a sick woman who became a burden," she explained. "And because I'm afraid you'll feel guilty for not having looked for me sooner." "I do feel guilty," Marcus admitted. "I always thought about looking for you, but I was afraid of what I might find." "And now?" Martha asked. "Do you regret coming?" Marcus looked at the frail woman in the bed, seeing decades of sacrifice and unrequited love in her tired eyes. "No," he said firmly. "I regret not coming sooner." They talked for 2 hours. Martha told him about her life, how she worked as a housekeeper in several homes, how she saved every penny thinking about leaving something for the son she never knew. Marcus talked about his childhood, his studies, how he met Sarah, his dreams and fears. "You need to take good care of Sarah," Martha said, as Marcus got ready to leave. "She's suffering so much from carrying this secret. She's afraid you'll hate her when you find out." "I could never hate Sarah," Marcus said. "She did all of this out of love." "Then tell her that you know," Martha pleaded. "Don't let her keep carrying this weight alone." Marcus kissed his mother's forehead for the first time in his life. "I'll take care of both of you," he promised. That night, Marcus came home determined to talk to Sarah. He found her in the kitchen making dinner, her eyes red with exhaustion. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said softly. She turned around and Marcus saw the immediate fear in her eyes. "About what?" She tried to keep her voice steady. "About my mother." Sarah dropped the spoon she was holding. Her face went pale instantly. "Marcus, I can explain," she began, but he interrupted her. "You don't need to explain anything." Marcus stepped closer and pulled her into a hug. "I know everything. I know about Martha, about the hospital, about the surgery, about the money you've been spending." Sarah started crying uncontrollably in his arms. "I wanted to tell you, Marcus. Every day I wanted to tell you, but she made me promise," Sarah sobbed. "And I was afraid you'd never forgive me for hiding it." "How could I not forgive you?" Marcus pulled back slightly to look into Sarah's eyes. "You did the most generous thing anyone has ever done for me. You took care of my mother, like she was your own family." "She doesn't have much time, Marcus," Sarah said through her tears. "The doctor said it's only a matter of days." "I know." Marcus held her even tighter. "And we're going to be there with her." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Martha's final days were unlike anything Marcus could have imagined. He and Sarah took turns at the hospital, making sure she was never alone. Marcus discovered that his biological mother had a dry sense of humor and a wisdom about life that came from decades of struggle and sacrifice. "Do you know what makes me happiest?" Martha said one afternoon with Marcus and Sarah by her side. "What?" Marcus asked. "Seeing that you two truly love each other." She smiled weakly. "Sarah told me how you met, how she supports you in everything. That gives me peace." "Actually," Sarah said, holding Martha's hand, There's something I never told either of you." Marcus and Martha looked at her curiously. 2 years ago, when I told Marcus we'd had a loss, Sarah took a deep breath. "I was pregnant, and we lost the baby very early in the pregnancy. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Sarah, why did you never tell me?" "Because you were so shaken by the idea that something could have gone wrong that you chose to pretend it never happened," Sarah explained. "But I really wanted Mrs. Martha to know that she already had a little grandson waiting for her in heaven." Martha began to cry, but they were tears of joy mixed with sorrow. "You're going to have more children," she said with conviction, "and I'll be watching over them from wherever I am." That night, Martha called Marcus and Sarah close to her bed. "I have something to leave for you two," she said, pointing to a small box on the nightstand. Inside the box were some old photographs, documents, and a sealed letter. "Marcus, in this letter is everything I always wanted to tell you but never had the courage," Martha explained. "And there are also the papers for the little house in Astoria. It's yours now." "Mother." Marcus said the word for the first time. "I don't need anything. I just wish I'd had more time with you." "We had the time we were meant to have," Martha smiled. "And Sarah, my dear, thank you for giving me the chance to meet my son before I go." Sarah held Martha's hand tenderly. "Thank you for teaching me what true love is," Sarah replied. The next morning, Martha passed away peacefully in her sleep, with Marcus and Sarah by her side. She had fulfilled her dream of meeting her son and seeing that he was happy and loved. The funeral was small but full of love. Marcus discovered that his mother had touched the lives of many people over the years. Several families she had worked for attended, sharing stories about her dedication and kindness. "She always talked about a son she had given up for adoption," an elderly woman told Marcus. "She said that one day you would find each other again." Weeks later, Marcus and Sarah went to the house in Astoria that Martha had left for them. It was a simple house, but full of little details that showed how much she thought about the son she never got to know. There was a collection of newspaper clippings about successful young entrepreneurs, photos of happy families cut out from magazines, a baby album she had put together, imagining what Marcus must have been like as a child. "Look at this," Sarah showed him a notebook where Martha had written letters to Marcus for years, letters she never sent. Marcus read a few and discovered that his mother had followed his life from afar, through acquaintances, and even hiring a private investigator a few years earlier to make sure he was doing well. "She knew about our pharmacy," Marcus said, impressed. "She knew about our marriage, about everything. And yet she never interfered," Sarah added. "She only wanted to appear when she was dying, and even then she tried to protect you from finding out." In Martha's bedroom, they found something that moved them deeply. She had kept a blue baby outfit for 45 years, hoping that one day she would get to meet the grandchild she dreamed of having. "Marcus," Sarah said, holding the tiny outfit, "I have something to tell you." He looked at her expectantly. "I went to the doctor yesterday," Sarah smiled through her tears. "I'm pregnant." Marcus was in shock for a moment, then hugged Sarah with all the strength he had. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Sarah laughed. "I think Mrs. Martha is looking after us from up there." 9 months later, Marcus and Sarah were at the same Mercy General Hospital where Martha had spent her final days, but this time they were in the maternity ward, welcoming a new life. The baby was a healthy, strong boy. When the doctor placed him in Marcus's arms, he couldn't stop crying. "What should we name him?" Sarah asked. Marcus looked at his son, seeing in his tiny eyes a familiarity that transcended generations. "Julian," he said. "Julian Martha Bennett." Sarah smiled. "I think your mother would have liked that." "I know she's loving it," Marcus said, kissing his son's forehead. 3 years later, Marcus, Sarah, and little Julian visited Martha's grave every Sunday after Mass. Julian had learned to blow kisses to Grandma in the sky and always left a yellow daisy on the grave. "Daddy, can Grandma see me?" Julian asked on one of those visits. "She can, my son," Marcus replied, "and she's very proud of you." "Of Mommy too?" Julian asked. "Especially of Mommy." Marcus looked at Sarah with infinite gratitude. "Because Mommy took care of Grandma when she needed it." Sarah was pregnant again, This time, expecting a girl, they had already decided to name Maria. "You know," Sarah said, stroking her belly, "sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if I had told you everything from the start." "It wouldn't have been better," Marcus said with conviction. "You did exactly what needed to be done. You gave her the dignity of choosing how she wanted to be remembered, and you gave me time to process everything in my own way. Don't you regret losing time with her?" "No," Marcus held Sarah's hand, "because the time we had was perfect. It was intense, true, without resentment or obligation. It was pure love." They walked back to the car, Julian running ahead, playing among the cemetery trees. The little house in Astoria had become the family's weekend home, a place where Marcus felt connected to his roots. "Marcus," Sarah said when they were almost at the car, "have you ever thought about how strange our story is?" "Why?" "Because if you hadn't suspected my mysterious runs, if you hadn't pretended to be a driver, maybe you never would have found out about your mother," Sarah reflected. "That's true," Marcus smiled. "Sometimes jealousy can lead to wonderful discoveries." "Are you still jealous of me?" Sarah teased. "Only when you take too long at the supermarket," Marcus laughed. "Then I imagine you're running off with the butcher." They laughed together, a light laugh that carried years of overcoming and love earned through difficulties. In the car, Julian fell asleep in the back seat, tired from running among the graves. Marcus drove slowly, savoring those moments of family peace. "Sarah," he said softly, "thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me that sometimes protecting someone means carrying the weight alone," Marcus explained, "and for showing me that true love isn't just about sharing joys, but about taking on each other's pain." Sarah held Marcus's hand over the gear shift. "And you taught me that it's worth fighting for those we love, even when appearances are confusing," she replied. "You know what impresses me most about this whole story?" Marcus asked. "What?" "How my mother managed to find you," Marcus said. "Of all the people in the world, she found exactly the woman I needed by my side." "Maybe it wasn't coincidence," Sarah suggested. "Maybe she recognized in me someone who would take good care of her son." Marcus thought about that possibility. Martha had met Sarah at a random medical appointment, had told her story, and asked for help. But maybe, deep down, she knew exactly what she was doing. "Do you think she planned everything from the beginning?" Marcus asked. "I think mothers always know more than they show." Sarah smiled. "And I think she wanted to make sure you were with someone who loved you enough to make any sacrifice for you." They got home as the sun was setting. Marcus carried sleeping Julian inside, while Sarah prepared dinner. It was a simple domestic scene, but filled with meaning after everything they had been through. During dinner, Julian woke up and wanted to hear more stories about Grandma in heaven. "Tell me about when Grandma was young, Dad," he asked. Marcus told about how Martha had worked hard all her life, how she had saved every penny thinking of her son. He talked about her strength, about how she never gave up dreaming of a reunion. "And Mom? How did Mom meet Grandma?" Julian asked. Sarah told her version of the story, omitting the more complex details for the child's age. She talked about how she had offered to help an elderly woman who was alone, about how they had become friends. "That's why it's important to help people, Julian," Sarah concluded. "We never know how a gesture of kindness can change someone's life." That night, after Julian went to sleep, Marcus and Sarah sat on the porch, watching the stars. "Do you still think about her?" Sarah asked. "Every day," Marcus admitted. "But it's not sadness. It's gratitude. Gratitude for having had the chance to know her, even if for a short time. And for me, what do you feel for me now?" Sarah asked with vulnerability. Marcus turned to look at his wife, the woman who had carried the weight of a devastating secret for months to protect him. "I feel a love I didn't know existed," he said honestly. "Before, I loved you for what you were to me. Now I love you for what you're capable of doing for others, even when it hurts you." Sarah rested her head on Marcus's shoulder. "Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing," she confessed. "If I should have told you from the beginning." "You did exactly what needed to be done," Marcus repeated. "And you know why? Because you allowed my mother to die, knowing she had raised a son who found a woman capable of loving him unconditionally. They sat in silence for a few minutes, processing everything they had been through. "Marcus," Sarah said eventually, "I have a confession to make." "Another one?" he teased, but affectionately. "When I was taking care of your mother, in the hardest moments, I used to wonder if I could be strong enough," Sarah explained. "But you know what gave me strength?" "What?" "Imagining how you would feel knowing that someone took care of her when you couldn't," Sarah said. "It made me understand that love isn't just about being there. Sometimes it's about making sure someone else is there when you can't be." Marcus held Sarah tighter. "You know what the moment that affected me the most in this whole story was?" he asked. "What?" "When I was pretending to be the driver and I heard you crying in the back seat," Marcus recalled. "At that moment, all I wanted to do was hold you and tell you everything was going to be okay, even without knowing what the problem was. And now you know you were right," Sarah smiled. "Everything turned out okay." "It turned out better than okay," Marcus corrected. "It turned out perfect." They went inside and lay down. Marcus watched Sarah fall asleep, still amazed by the strength and dedication of his wife. He thought about how life had taken care of bringing together three people who needed one another. Him, who needed to know his roots; Sarah, who needed to prove to herself the depth of her love; and Martha, who needed to know that her sacrifice had been worth it. In the next room, Julian was sleeping soundly, surrounded by toys and books, living the happy childhood his biological grandmother had dreamed of for Marcus. In a few months he would have a baby sister named Maria, completing the circle of love that had begun with a painful secret. Marcus fell asleep thinking about how sometimes the most painful lies can hide the most beautiful truths. Sarah had lied to him for months, but every lie was a demonstration of love. She had chosen to carry the pain alone to preserve his peace, and in the end, that choice had allowed them to experience something far deeper and more meaningful. The next morning, Marcus woke up with Julian jumping on the bed. "Daddy, Mommy said we're going to visit Grandma's house today," the boy said excitedly. "That's right, champ," Marcus stretched. "We're going to bring flowers for her garden." The house in Astoria had become a sanctuary for the family. Marcus had renovated a few rooms, but kept everything exactly as Martha had left it. Her room remained untouched, with her photos and memories preserved. In the garden, Julian ran among the plants that Martha had cared for with so much love. Marcus and Sarah worked together, planting new flowers and tending to the ones that were already there. "Look, Daddy," Julian shouted from the back of the garden. "There's a box here." Marcus went over to where his son was and found a small metal box buried near a rose bush. Inside it were more letters, old photographs, and a key. "What do you think this key opens?" Sarah asked. They searched the house until they found a small trunk in the attic. The key fit perfectly. Inside the trunk there were more memories. Baby clothes Martha had bought dreaming of grandchildren, a simple wedding ring that must have belonged to some old boyfriend, and an envelope with Marcus's name on it. Inside the envelope there was a significant amount of money and one final letter. "My dear son, if you're reading this, it means you found my secret treasure. This money is for your children's education. I want them to have all the opportunities I couldn't give you. Sarah told me you want a big family. I hope this house is filled with children's laughter, that the garden is trampled by little feet chasing butterflies. I know you'll be the father I always dreamed you'd be. And I know Sarah will be the mother any child would want to have. Thank you for forgiving me, even without knowing there was anything to forgive. Thank you for growing into a good man, even without having a mother to teach you. And thank you most of all for choosing a woman who loved me like a daughter in my final days. With all the love I couldn't show in life, your mother, Martha." Marcus finished reading with tears in his eyes. Sarah was also crying, moved by Martha's kind words about her. "See?" Sarah said, smiling through her tears. "She planned everything from the start, including leaving us an inheritance for the kids." Marcus laughed. "She really thought of everything." Julian, not fully understanding his parents' emotion, but realizing it was something special, came closer and hugged them both. "Was Grandma hiding presents for us?" he asked. Yes, she was my love, Sarah replied. Very special presence. They spent the rest of the day organizing Martha's memories, creating photo albums and setting aside objects they wanted to preserve for future generations. Marcus decided to turn one of the rooms into a library for the children, using the money Martha had left to buy educational books. You know what moves me the most, Marcus said in the afternoon when they were resting on the house's porch. What? Imagining Martha planning all of this, Marcus gestured toward the house. She must have spent years thinking about every detail, about how to leave something special for the family she never got to know. And she succeeded, Sarah added. She left much more than a house and money. She left a lesson about unconditional love. Julian was playing in the garden with a toy car, making engine noises and inventing adventures. Every now and then he would stop and look at the sky, as if he were talking to someone invisible. Who are you talking to, Julian? Sarah asked. With Grandma, he answered naturally. I'm telling her about the new car. Marcus and Sarah exchanged emotional glances. For Julian, Martha's presence was as real as theirs. He had grown up hearing stories about her, visiting her grave, living in her house. For him, having a grandma in heaven was completely natural. And what is Grandma saying? Marcus asked, playing along. She said she's very happy because the house isn't quiet anymore, Julian replied, and that she likes it when I run in the garden because it makes the flowers laugh. Sarah held Marcus's hand, both moved by their son's pure and innocent imagination. Julian, Marcus called, come here, son. The boy came running and sat on his father's lap. I want you to know something very important, Marcus said seriously. Grandma in heaven loved you very much, even before you were born. What do you mean, Dad? She dreamed about you for many years, Marcus explained. And when she found out you were going to be born, she was very happy. That's why she left this house to us, so you could play in her garden. And will she take care of the little sister too? Julian asked, placing his hand on Sarah's belly. Yes, she will, Sarah replied, and of all the little siblings you might have in the future. Julian smiled and went back to playing, satisfied with the answers. Marcus and Sarah stood watching, thinking about how life had managed to create a perfect family out of painful circumstances. Marcus, Sarah said eventually, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you still think about those days when you were pretending to be a driver? When you thought I was cheating on you? Marcus laughed, remembering the paranoia and desperation he had felt. I do, he admitted, and I'm amazed at how I managed to misinterpret everything. It wasn't your fault, Sarah defended. I really was being very mysterious. That's true, Marcus agreed, but now I understand that sometimes people act mysterious for the best possible reasons. And you? Don't you regret following me? Suspecting me? Marcus thought for a moment. No, he said finally, because if I hadn't done that, I might never have found out about my mother, and she would have died without me ever knowing she existed. Then it was lucky you were a jealous husband, Sarah teased. It was lucky I had a wife worth being jealous over, Marcus retorted, kissing her. The sun was beginning to set, painting the Astoria sky with shades of gold and pink. The family gathered Julian's toys and got ready to return home to Scarsdale. Can we come back next week? Julian asked. We can, Marcus promised. This house will always be ours. In the car on the way back home, Julian fell asleep again in the back seat. Marcus drove, thinking about how his life had changed completely in a matter of months. He had started that period thinking he might lose his wife and ended up gaining a mother, a deeper understanding of love, and a growing family. Sarah, he said softly, thank you for teaching me that true love sometimes means making difficult decisions alone. And you taught me that it's worth fighting for the people we love, even when we don't fully understand what's happening, Sarah replied. You know what strikes me most about this whole story? What? How three people who loved each other managed to protect one another, each in their own way, Marcus reflected. My mother protected me by not interfering in my life. You protected me by carrying the secret. And I, without knowing it, protected you both by not finding out before the right time. Maybe that's what true love really is, Sarah suggested. It's not just about being together. It's about doing what's best for the other person, even when that means being alone with the pain. They arrived home when night had already fallen. Marcus carried Julian to bed, while Sarah got everything ready for the next day. It was a simple household routine, but one that now held a much deeper meaning. Before going to sleep, Marcus went to the room that would be for the daughter who was about to be born. The walls were already painted light pink, and there was some furniture waiting for little Martha's arrival. He imagined how he would explain to her when she grew up the story of the grandmother she never met, but who had loved her before even knowing she would exist. Sarah appeared at the bedroom door. "Thinking about our princess?" she asked. "Thinking about how I'm going to tell her about Grandma Martha," Marcus said, "and how I'm going to explain that sometimes people do difficult things out of love." "She'll understand," Sarah said confidently. "Just like Julian understands now." "Do you think we're doing everything right?" Marcus asked, with the natural insecurity of someone building a family. "I think we're doing the best we can," Sarah replied. "And I think your mother would be proud to see the family we've built." Marcus hugged Sarah, feeling the small belly where his daughter was growing. In a few months, the house would be even fuller of life, laughter, and love. "Sarah," he said, "promise me something." "What?" "Promise me that if you ever have to carry a heavy burden again, you'll share it with me from the start." Sarah laughed softly. "I promise," she said, "but only if you promise you'll never pretend to be a rideshare driver again." "I promise," Marcus laughed too. "I think I've had enough adventure for a lifetime." They went to bed in each other's arms, their hearts full of gratitude for everything they had lived through and overcome. Outside, New York City continued its bustling nightlife, but inside that house, there was a deep peace that came from a love tested and proven by the most difficult circumstances. Marcus fell asleep thinking about his biological mother, about Sarah, about Julian, and about the daughter who was about to arrive. He thought about how sometimes life tests us in ways we could never imagine, but those tests can reveal strengths we didn't even know we had. In the end, that story that had begun with distrust and fear had turned into a lesson about the true nature of unconditional love. Sarah had loved Marcus enough to carry a terrible pain all by herself. Martha had loved her son enough to give up knowing him in order to protect him. And Marcus had learned to love in a deeper and more generous way. The Bennett family had found its completeness through pain, perseverance, and mutual understanding. And Martha, wherever she was, could finally rest in peace, knowing that her son was surrounded by true love. The end. And you? What did you think of this emotional story? Can you imagine how hard it must have been for Sarah to carry such a heavy secret all alone? Leave in the comments which part touched you the most and whether you believe she made the right choice. Your sincere words are very important to us, and don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that go straight to the heart. Thank you so much for your company.